We are live! Woohoo! Now, people probably think we spend like 10, 15, 20, half an hour prepping this. We really don't. It was like the very last second and Amanda had appeared because she was caught up on a call and I'm like going, what are we going to talk about today? So we always say anything can happen during the Green Umbrella Live Lunch, and today that is especially true. First of all, you'll notice Jane isn't here. So Jane is on annual leave at the moment. She's taking a well-deserved rest. That means that someone has to pick up all the admin that happens after the Green Umbrella Live Lunch. And that's going to be you, isn't it, Mark? You're going to make sure it gets out there everywhere. So Nicola, who is watching this, taking notes, you need to email the notes to Mark. Don't send them to me. He'll sort it all.
I've just got to do it because otherwise I'll get in trouble with Jane, basically.
Absolutely. And the thing is, there's this thing when you go on holiday, it's like, it's really hard to switch off. So like Monday morning, Mark and I were going like, do you think she's checked her emails already? Yeah, we know she has. Like we could see her online, see Jane's online in Slack, which is like our internal comms thing. And if she popped up commenting on this in a minute, it would not surprise us. But it's like, it's really hard to take a break from work when you're living or working in a social media world. So, Jane, if you are listening, go do something.
She's too busy drinking gin at the minute.
Well, cider, I think. I saw her at a cider farm.
Yeah.
It's an alcohol tour, basically, I think she's on, isn't it?
Gin Jane.
Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. So that's Jane, which means that because like Jane's like process queen here, so she's left me and Mark to kind of run things, which means I've got a really tiny list because I can't be trusted to do anything, and Mark's got a massive list, which is great from my perspective. But Amanda, you've had a couple of weeks off as well, a couple of weeks break from the Green Umbrella world. So
yeah.
Have you come back all nice and refreshed?
Well, I guess semi-refreshed, I would say, because I had I had 1 week where we had a client that had a big project, so kind of event. It was kind of event marketing, I suppose, which is a little bit different from some of the social media stuff that we do, although obviously that's a big part of it. So I had some time just focusing on that, and then I did have a day off as well. So it feels like ages since I've been back on the GU Live Lunch.
Absolutely. And sort of returning to the kind of like the everyday social media, where like, you're 8 hours a day in LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Seen any changes? Anything that's made you go like, what is that? Or why doesn't that work anymore?
Well, so the biggie for me, which I suppose is not new, because it's kind of happening before, is the Facebook Manager. So the Facebook Manager Business Suite. They've changed the back end of it, but it was one of those gradual changes. So I think we were trying to find ways around it. But now, what people are previously used to seeing, you have to go through Business Suite to manage it. And it's rubbish. So Facebook, if you're listening, it's rubbish. So when you go through your notifications and you want to see, so if you've got people mentioning your page or sharing your posts, you can't see who they all are. So normally you'd get that, you click on the notification, get them in a nice list so you could go through and interact with everybody. And it's just not there anymore. It's just making life more difficult. So it tells you people have shared them, but you only get to see the first person who's done it, not all of them. So it's making, not just our job harder, but anybody who is managing their own Facebook for Business feed. So it's just a bit of a pain. So I was kind of hoping that while I've been off that had changed. It hasn't, which is a shame. I have really noticed as well. So again, sticking with Facebook, the group. So when you're in a group, you can rate comments to kind of push them up the list. So there's the little arrows like you get, I think it's on YouTube, to push them up and down. So I haven't really used it.
I think it's literally only the last couple of days that we heard about it being tested. probably 2 or 3 months ago, but literally the last couple of days we've just seen that. But there's another announcement for Facebook groups, which is basically you can now have, like you get those little labels in a Facebook group, and it's like you're a top contributor, or you're you're a visual storyteller, and all that kind of stuff. Well, actually, as admins, you're going to be able to assign people an expert badge. Which I think is quite cool. So let's say we wanted to, so Paul is in the audience today on Facebook. If we wanted Paul to come into a group that we owned, and we wanted to give him an expert badge because he's an expert in Green Umbrella Live Lunches, or I was going with networking first, but I thought that was funnier. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Well, not interesting. I just thought it's a really positive move. So, like in our group, we could kind of say, well, you're the expert in, like, from a copywriting perspective. Mark's an expert from a, design or from a web perspective, and I'm just an expert talker. But yeah, I thought it was quite a good move, really, to be able to kind of go in and say, well, I need to talk to someone about this particular thing. Actually, here's someone in this group that I know. I can ask them that question. So. Yeah, Paul's just said in the comments he'd love a badge. Pick me. I'm like, yeah, everyone likes a badge, right? It's not to like.
Yeah.
Cool. But anyway, I interrupted you, Amanda. So what you've probably prepared something that you were going to share today anyway, or anything you wanted to chit chat about?
So I've got two sort of topics, I suppose. Well, yeah. So some is kind of things that have happened in the world of social media. And then the other was kind of learnings from my past couple of weeks about event management. So where do you want to go first? Or neither?
Let's go. Oh, it's too hard to choose.
All right, I'm going to go social news. news.
Do it.
So, because I think from the last time I was on Live Lunch, we were talking about TikTok and video content, because I'd just done a presentation on it. And we all agreed that I'm looping you both into this because you're in my age bracket, in my demographic, but we are too old for TikTok generally.
Excuse me.
Sweeping generalization, I know, but but yeah. So some things I've learned. So TikTok has. I've written it down, so that's why I'm just referring to my notes. It's still the most downloaded non-gaming app. So, and it's been at the top of the charts for about the last 18 months, occasionally knocked off by WhatsApp or Telegram, which is kind of an alternative to WhatsApp. But there was again in June. So yeah, it's still very much kind of top of the pile when it comes to people using it. And I have a teen living with me now. So for the summer, my nephew has moved in. He's 17. And when he's not, eating or, trying to get me to buy him beer or something like that, he's just scrolling through TikTok, basically. So, and in the US, TikTok have now launched. They're basically trying to slide into the recruitment space, and they have launched Resumés. So as we would call them, CVs, on TikTok. So people can create a kind of, this is why you should hire me. And they can, they have the text that appears that goes, great team worker or proactive or whatever they might add. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting move. So a way of connecting younger people and getting them into the job seeking space.
Awesome. So this came up last week on Live Lunch, and we were asked a question that we all kind of went, I basically went, wish Amanda was here to answer.
Ooh.
So the question was, it was from, no, I never know how to say his last name, Robert Dag or Robert Darg on LinkedIn. Yeah. And Robert does loads of stuff around sort of diversity, inclusion, and sort of, subjects around bias and that kind of stuff. And he basically said, okay, what, they're doing this, but is this going to increase unconscious bias, or like what impact is it going to have from that perspective? And for a minute, I was kind of like, this is going to make it really inclusive. And then I kind of went, actually, no, it's not. Or is it? Well, actually, you've got more control to be able to do other things. And then I was literally proof that this is live, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what questions going to throw. And I just thought, in that second, and because the news had broken that day or the day before, I was like, I really don't know.
Do you know that my mind went in that direction immediately when I read it, because, you know, we talk about, oh, hang on, excuse me.
Oh, she's so cute when she sneezes.
So I'm really hay fevery today. So if anyone else is there, you know, pollen counted to the max, I'm feeling your pain. But yes, so that's exactly where my mind went when I saw the news, because you kind of think, well, surely this leans towards people who are extroverted and want to be on camera. You know, what about people that? Thank you, Stevens just said bless you. So yeah, yeah, that's exactly where I went, because I thought we all have these unconscious biases. You know, there are a lot of reasons why companies do what they call, you know, blind hiring or anonymous hiring, where they take out names, they take out any identifiable information, basically, so that people can't be biased based on like age, name, even the location of where they live. So I think it will encourage bias, but there are pros to it as a way of engaging some of the younger audiences. So as long as a company didn't go down the route of saying we only take applications this way.
So the focus of it is very much early careers. So
Yeah.
it is about getting that kind of like graduate market, or certainly that age range, or like the lower skilled kind of roles, I guess. And, you know, and of course, because of the demographics of TikTok, that makes a lot of sense. But I think from the bias thing, if the possibility of unconscious bias because of the, you know, your environment, let's say, that you might be in, you know, you've got that freedom in that you can go anywhere to produce that video. You know, so I think in some ways it kind of creates opportunities in some ways as much as it takes it away in others. But I think until, you know, it's in test, it's in the US, there's only certain companies that have been invited to take part. I think it's one of those things, like 3 months, 6 months time, we'll see what the outcome has been. But it's certainly really interesting. And I like this idea of this kind of like TikTok job boards kind of thing that's existing alongside it as well. We really wished you were there for that conversation last week. And
it's nice to be.
But I might not be like the dancer, and lip syncing is definitely not my thing. But I don't think I'm too old for TikTok.
No, you're right. And in some ways, I actually want to get into TikTok more, because I think as a video editing tool, it's great. You can create some really engaging content. So, but it's like any of those things, just having a good time. So I need to make time and learn. Absolutely.
One of the other things with TikTok that's actually, there's a couple of things with TikTok. They're just doing loads and loads of just loads of stuff. Okay, I was going to say innovation. It's not necessarily innovation. One of the things that they've done is that they've opened a shop in London that is I think it's called For You House, where you could go in and meet the people that you've been following on to, you know, the kind of the superstar TikTok creators, which brings that kind of brings that experiential element to it. And I think it's a nice way to bring the online and the offline together. The other thing as well that I kind of was going to mention, because I was going to take the conversation somewhere else slightly, and make Mark talk from it. End of last week, TikTok announced that they were basically creating it's almost like automated removal of hateful comments. Okay, so obviously they announced that on the Friday, and we've seen lots of things on all the social media platforms, especially over the last 2 years, where there's going to be, you know, things pop up on Instagram if you're commenting on something and maybe you're not being very nice. It's like, you've written this comment, do you want to think twice before you post this? So we're going to see that flash up. You know, with Facebook, they're constantly sort of tweaking how they deal with unpleasant behaviour on the platform, and when people are reporting abuse and that sort of stuff. So this came out on Friday, and I thought, oh, okay, automated removal, that's interesting. And especially with kind of like, the sort of cyberbullying, all these types of topics that come around again and again and again, and didn't think too much more of it. And Sunday happened with the football, which I'm not a sports person at all anyway. So that kind of happened, and obviously the results came in, and I have to admit, my first thought with the result was tomorrow's going to be horrible for our guys, in terms of, there's going to be a lot of negativity. Like, my mind immediately went there, like the kind of stuff we're going to see, the unpleasant comments that appear in these situations. And then obviously Monday morning was just horrendous in terms of the stuff that was being shared online about the players and the racial stuff and that kind of thing. And as the day went on, there were another couple of things as well, completely unrelated to the football, but it just all sort of happened on one day, where I'd heard about a client of ours that's been doing some video content had someone had said something very unpleasant to them about their videos that had really knocked their confidence and quite upset them. And I was just like, I love social media, and I put this on LinkedIn. I absolutely love social media, but sometimes I really hate that everyone gets to use it. I'm not, everyone has a voice, and you might be the most unpleasant person on this planet. You still have the right to have a voice. But it's just kind of like, all this, I just don't understand why. I don't understand why people are happy to put this stuff out there in black and white with their name next to it and not think.
Yeah. And it's abhorrent, isn't it? It's just awful. And some of these people are, they have careers and jobs, and it's not hard to go and track them down and, let their employers know on LinkedIn. So people are losing their jobs over this. And it's just, I think there's a comedian, I must admit, I hadn't heard of him, but I did recognize him when I saw a photo, who sent out some tweets on Monday morning and has now basically had his tour cancelled. All the venues are going, sorry, we're not having you here after those racist comments. And I think, well, great, fair play to them for standing up to it, because it's just not acceptable. But yeah, you think, what on earth goes through their minds?
It's just crazy. I mean, we were having the conversation earlier, Mark, weren't we, about there's certain sports where, how did you describe, you kind of like, people say, oh, it doesn't happen in this sport, it doesn't happen in that sport, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were talking about the football v rugby thing. Obviously, me being a rugby fan and not particularly into football, but there'd perhaps be a preconception that it's a football thing, maybe. But obviously, I think we spoke about it. I think it was during the Six Nations, and almost it wasn't obviously a racist type thing that was happening, but there was such abuse to some of the Welsh players back in sort of, what was it, in March, April, wasn't it? So it's not confined to a sport, or whether it be racist or just general personal abuse. I think it is that thing where people are sitting behind a screen, and like you say, they just think they can do whatever they want and not have any consequences. And there was obviously a lot of things that came out, like you say, on Monday or Sunday night, Monday morning. There was, I can't remember what company it was. I did see one guy that had been obviously sacked from his job pretty much straight away, because it was obvious who he was. People not, like you say, not thinking about what they're posting, and the fact that everything is public. I know we've spoken about this so many times, especially from an employment point of view. Someone's going to find it, someone's going to see it, someone's going to know it's you. And then something related to what you were saying about automated takedown of sort of comments and things, that Stephen's just said something about the legal responsibility as well, which is another obviously different thing. But there was a certain comment that was reported, I think, on Instagram. I'm not sure which of the players it was against, but it was basically an emoji. And I think it was Instagram, and there was hundreds or maybe thousands of reports of this comment, but they couldn't take it down. But because in its isolation, it didn't mean anything.
Yeah,
they didn't take it down initially. And I don't know whether that was an automated thing or whether, I'm sure in the end someone would have had to obviously look at it and take that comment down. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing, really. It's like, yeah, certain things don't necessarily flag up as being inappropriate, but in the context of a conversation, they need to be looked at. And I don't know how I'm sure they've got, obviously very complex software, but it's an interesting thing.
I think that's the thing in the world of like AI and machine learning and all these awesome things that we all the awesome capabilities and innovations that exist. It's like, how is it this can still happen? Even if we've got the cockwombles out there, and I realize we're live and representing the brand and everything else, but it's actually. If we've got people that are doing this stuff out there, how are we not in a world yet where this stuff can be removed? And I get it's the contextual elements and all that sort of stuff, but if you can place an ad on Facebook that's absolutely a-okay and it gets identified as being possibly harmful content, that it exists, because we have problems all the time where something that should be allowed through gets caught up in these filters. So actually, when it is stuff that is blatant, how could it not get caught? Stephen, who's been a guest on Live Lunch before, he's over on LinkedIn, and he's kind of said social media channels could easily add a racist tag to each offending account profile. It's like, actually, let's give them a label.
But that might be a badge of honour as well, though.
Although the problem is,
Mark, that's a good point. Sorry.
The problem is there's the. I keep looking out the window. It makes me look really distracted. It's like I get really angry about this stuff, so I'm like trying to contain myself. There are people that will be, that person's XYZ, but I'm not a racist. And you're like, do you know everything you just said and what it actually means? It's like how, being given that label, do people see them? It's like a wheelchair user, giving them that label of you're disabled. Well, actually, maybe they don't. That's not a label that they kind of see themselves as owning. It becomes tricky then, and like I said, that kind of situation where people will say things in a certain way and not actually realise what it is they're saying. It just happens so often. It's it's if you've ever caught yourself saying, I'm not insert whatever here, but I'm really sorry to tell you, but you probably are just a little bit. It's
starting a sentence often with I'm not being funny, but, and then you try and give an example. That's when you need to check yourself. But I think the point about context for the comments, so as Mark said, if you've just got an emoji, how can you necessarily pick that up? How can you potentially pick that up? But also, I know we've had, like you say, with ads, we work with someone who was a jewelry maker. She put some ads through, a necklace basically, but because it was someone's sort of neckline area, it got rejected for having too much skin, too much flesh in it. So that's machine learning thinking, well, there's is this potentially pornography? And it's like, well, no, it's not. But
unless you've got to think about necks.
Well, people are out there. So I'm sure we've all done it. Where I used to work for a company that were in construction and waste removal. And for them, if you talked about hardcore, it was like rubble and stone. But the amount of times you used to try and Google hardcore or things like that, and you can imagine the sorts of things.
It's so difficult But here's the other thing as well, okay? And I very, very rarely engage in this stuff because I've never been able to come up with a response to it that is strong enough that really communicates everything I think and feel and live by. But with this stuff on Monday, I was kind of like, well, we've got some dreg of society putting this stuff out there. And although people are pointing it out and saying, you know, they're wrong for saying what they've said and how inappropriate it is and everything else, actually all we're doing is amplifying what's been said in the first place. And I think it's that, you know, what's the right approach? Is it there's all this negativity, we need to drown it out with positivity? You know, it's, you know, was I sharing things that I'd seen from other people going, this is outrageous? No. But I was going like report, block. You know, and there's people I blocked on Monday on Facebook. There's people that I've unfollowed on LinkedIn on Monday morning, Monday afternoon. You know, and it's kind of like I don't want to have the conversation with them. I don't want to share what they've said with other people that I'm connected to online. And so it becomes really difficult, doesn't it? Because you kind of want to create some awareness, but you don't want to, you know, increase the eyes on that message. I didn't want to be pushing that stuff into other people's feeds. And so it becomes quite tricky, actually. How do we respond to this stuff responsibly when, you know, we've all got a personal brand, we've all got an audience that we've worked hard to build. Therefore, we've all got the opportunity to share something.
Yeah. Again, I'm probably, we haven't discussed this, as you said. We don't plan what we're talking about, but exactly the same. I was kind of the, well, if I'm ignoring it, does that mean I'm pretending it doesn't exist and I'm burying my head in the sand, or actually is it better to just not engage with it? And I was kind of, I don't want to engage with it. I don't, you know, if I see anything, then yeah, absolutely block, or you're out of my sphere. Or, you know, would I have called people out on it? Yeah, I like to think I would. I didn't actually see anything from people I knew. But yeah, I was kind of no, we need to, positivity and not engage with the negative, because that's all they want. That's, you know, people want to be relevant and controversial.
Absolutely.
Not all people. Hashtag not all people. But.
It's like everyone deserves a voice, okay? And it's like everyone deserves a voice. Whatever you feel about what they've got to say, everyone has that right, and they should have that right. And, you know, things like, you know, the guy that was working at Savills, wasn't he? And he's lost his job and the rest of it. And it's kind of like, I'm really glad. I'm really, really glad. At the same time, you know, should you lose your job because of something you've put on social media? Yeah. You know, take all that context away. Should you lose your job because you put something on social media?
100% if it's bad enough, I think.
Yeah, if it affects the perception of who you're working for as well.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it's a really, really grey line. I really do.
Yeah, it is a grey line, because what constitutes, you know. So I think when social media first came out, all parents were kind of saying to their children, you know, don't put pictures of you on getting drunk and being stupid. And it's kind of, well, is that okay? Maybe. Is it bringing, you know, and we're always again saying to people, you need to show some personality, you know, you've got a personal brand. So how far do you go? But if something is, you know, truly offensive, racist, bigoted, you know, whatever it might be, sexist, if it's there, then you should, you know, whether it's kind of warning, final warning, or you're out, then.
Do you know, I've always said, like, if you don't want it on a billboard outside your front door with your name and photo on it, don't say it. Don't put it on social. Don't type those words. And again, when I sort of started to see the posts about, you know, the guy, and obviously it was like, here's a screenshot of the tweet, here's a screenshot of his LinkedIn profile, and that was in my head then as well, because it was like, it was just that perfect, you know, you can't do something here and get away with it there. You know, it's like everything is so transparent. And even if you've got, you know, if you're going to be social, even if you've got all your privacy in place and, you know, all that sort of stuff, it's like, actually, you've only got to upset one person. You know, and it's not that we should then be fearful about what we post, but it is just that, you know, if you don't want it on a billboard outside your house with your name, your face on it, don't do it.
Good advice.
Okay, right, let's move on, because I literally could rant all day about that one, and I think I've done very well to control my tone and my language.
Very measured. Well done.
I know. Just take a moment, enjoy that one. So it's been like thinking about other things and other platforms and all that sort of stuff. There's been, last week there was like hardly any social media news really, but then this week there's been like tons of little bits and pieces and that kind of thing. We're kind of half an hour in, so I won't go too in depth on anything. But you know, one of the things that's happened is, so do you remember? TikTok created a fund for creators so that they could be rewarded for their content. Clubhouse did the same. Well, now Facebook's on it as well. So Facebook have pledged, I think it's $1 billion, and that's to be spent over the next 18 months with creators. So they're obviously, like I said, there's this trend of rewarding creators to make your platform more interesting, to make your platform the place to be. So I think that's quite interesting, that as we're starting to see Facebook lose more of their market share essentially to other platforms, that they've gone forward with that. And you know, $1 billion is quite a big pot to be playing with in a relatively short period of time, I thought, as well. So there's that, and we've talked about creator economies before, and you know, things like creator coins and stuff like that are now in existence. It kind of links in with that whole creator coin, NFT, you know, there's just loads of stuff there. I think we're just going to see that continue to grow. The other thing as well that I think is interesting, but this is more so from let's see something that seems let's spot something that seems really cool that everyone wants to use, and let's jump on the bandwagon, but it doesn't always work. And Fleets, which is it's basically stories on Twitter. So obviously, you know, stories were cool. Everyone started developing stories. Twitter called their option Fleets, and literally last week they were announcing new developments in Fleets. Well, yesterday they've announced that they're chucking it. They've given up. People aren't using them. Doesn't matter what they do. It's like just going to get rid of it. So some of the creative elements, they're going to be building those into just like how you normally structure a tweet. So we'll see some of that functionality appear there. They're looking at the kind of like full screen portrait style ads, and because they'd started to test adverts in Fleets. So they're looking at keeping those. Not quite sure how that will work, but there you go. But yeah, basically Fleets, which is, you know, their version of something that's been like really hot in the social media world for a good period of time now, disappears on the 3rd of August.
Oh, I didn't realise they were completely deprecating it.
Yeah, completely gone. 3rd of August, Fleets will be no more. And they basically just kind of went, do you know what? We try and do stuff, doesn't always work. On to the next project. Yeah.
Which is, in some ways, it's quite refreshing for them to admit that. It's kind of a, you know, when people really try and make a hashtag happen, you're like, stop trying to make it happen. It's not, no one's put up on this. So well done to Twitter for not.
Yeah. My only worry, though, which is kind of going to segue into another bit of news, is that they're going to replace that area in your Twitter app with active spaces. So people that are having those audio-only conversations, audio-only rooms, they're going to be there instead. So from a user perspective, there's still going to be something going on at the top of your Twitter app where, you know, a space where something should be happening, where nothing is happening. So we'll see. But the audio space thing the audio room thing, also social audio is still continuing to kick on. And now it's like we've got all these different versions everywhere. Clubhouse have signed a deal with TED.
Yeah.
And they are going to be hosting some exclusive TED Talks, which again, I like I say, Clubhouse really has kind of got this very, it's like an entrepreneurial community that are hanging out there. And like a lot of people that are finding success on that platform, I say it's still very early days, but like I said, it is those, the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneur celebrities, let's say. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting that these TED Talks are going to be there, and the kind of talks, it is very much like the stuff that's going to be right for coaches, for entrepreneurs, people that are interested in personal development. That's kind of where all that content is going at the minute. Do you guys are you into TED Talks? Do you watch them?
That was one of the bits of news I'd noted down as well, because it did make me go, oh, that's interesting. I do like a good TED Talk, I must admit. And I think you get a real variety of people from different backgrounds, different topics. I'm a big fan of Brené Brown. So I don't know if people know her. She's written sort of load of leadership books. Dare to Lead, Daring Greatly is fantastic. I can definitely recommend that to anyone. But a lot of her, brand and public persona was brought to public attention through a TED Talk. And yeah, it's fascinating. So yeah, I am a big fan of them. I probably don't watch as many as I would like or I could. So yeah, but when I saw that with Clubhouse, it did make me kind of go, oh, that's interesting, because as we know, I'm not a huge fan of Clubhouse. It just hasn't really drawn me in. So you never know. It might do now. They've introduced TED Talks.
Yeah, and I think I'm really interested in the live audio format of it as well. It's that, I watch TED Talks, whether it's through the, because they've got a couple of podcasts or through YouTube or through the TED app. But it's kind of, actually, I don't know, there's something when something's live rather than being pre-recorded. I think the experience of it feels different. I think that's the bit I like most about the social stuff. Would you ever do a TED Talk?
Oh my God, I'd love to be in a position where I could, or where I was even considered to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to. That's on my list.
Yeah, it's like a bucket list thing. So, well, look.
Oh, no, it's not a bucket list thing. It's like, I'm going to do a TED Talk.
Okay. What do you call it? Do you not have, is your bucket list not called a bucket list? This is
well, no, I just think like your bucket list thing is more kind of like, I don't know, more profound, maybe. Yeah,
because I call things bucket list, or I might say it's a trip of a lifetime. And my husband always tells me off for that, because he says it makes it sound like you're going to basically cark it afterwards, and you're never going to do it again.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like next 3 to 5 years TED Talk.
Christina, it's out there in the public. Do it. You could start with. So Stephen O'Donnell has just commented saying his RecX talks are entirely based on the TED Talk format, but for recruitment. Yeah,
love that. I did the Inspire recruitment a couple of years ago, which is like a Pecha Kucha style presentation, and that was scary as hell, but I kind of loved it at the same time.
I didn't know what Pecha Kucha was before, but it's kind of a quick fire. You had, how long was it? We had like 5 minutes.
Yeah, they kind of adjusted it, so it was. Yeah. I don't even remember what we had to do, but basically each slide is timed.
Yeah.
So I think you get like 15 seconds a slide and X number of slides, which means your presentation can only be that long, and you just have to be able to keep up with it, and you just have to deliver the content. And it's not having that clicker in your hand is like. Makes your heart go, that's for sure. But yeah. So Stephen said he'd like one or both of us to do a RecX talk. 100%, totally up for that, Stephen. Yeah. But then Stephen knows I can't keep my mouth shut anyway. It's like, Christina, do you want to come and talk? And I'm there. Can't help it.
Brilliant.
Help it. Cool. Okay, so just looking at my little bit of paper. Look, can you see my detailed notes here, written in pencil on a scrap of paper? I'm like, this is all the stuff I want to make sure I talk about. But I think we've covered it all from my perspective. Oh yeah, those TED Talks start on the 12th of
this week.
No. Yeah, I was going to say 12th week, commencing 12th of July. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. You talked about TikTok being most downloaded. We talked about fleets being gone. Yeah, that's everything on my bit of paper.
Done. Live launch done.
Boom. At least that's one thing on my list of today. Mark, have you got? You said you were going to chip in and stuff, and I suppose you have done a little bit, but
it's enough, definitely.
You've said your bit.
That's it. I'm all talked out.
You're the glue that keeps us together, Mark.
I'm just a bit underneath you two, just to prop up the screen.
Consider the support.
Yeah, just.
Awesome. So Paul Green has asked, have we got any guests lined up? And we have. We've got the 4 guests that we are talking to at the minute and getting dates sorted and that kind of stuff. So look out for that. And we've put a call out for guests as well. So who do you think should join us, Paul? And please don't suggest my husband. It's like, no one wants me and Kevin on this at the same time bickering. That's not going to be entertaining. But yeah, if you're watching this, if you're tuning in and you're listening to this now, if there's someone you think that should be joining us, then tell us. Paul, you can come on again, no problem. Although last time you whinged at me and said I was firing too many questions at you. So I'm like... Yeah, now. Cool. All right. So I'm going to wrap things up there. Thank you for joining us on this week's live lunch. And I think we're episode 69 next week. So the numbers are racking up. We need to start thinking about what we're going to do for our 100th episode. We should get someone super special on for that one. Don't know who. Let's start thinking. But yeah. Episode 69 next week, 12 o'clock. Green Umbrella Facebook page, my LinkedIn, YouTube, and come and hang out with us again. We'll see you soon. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
All right.